name is Thanos Bostanis. I am a lecturer here at the University of Kent at the Tizard Center, a lecturer in intellectual and developmental disabilities. And here at the Tizard Center, we have two ABAI verified courses in ABA and positive behavior support. And that's why we have organized this monthly journal club to disseminate really good practice in our field. If you don't know the Tizard Center, just to say that we have PhD opportunities for you. You can check those out on our website, tizard.org. And you also can submit your work to our peer-reviewed journal, which is called Tizard Learning Disability Review. And we would welcome submissions from all of you folks working in the field of disabilities. If you're doing ABA, PBS, or something related to learning and intellectual disabilities, please do consider submitting at the Tizard Learning Disability Review. Now, we are giving a free CEU today. I'm going to give you 3 keywords throughout the session. When you collect all 3, please email me with your name as you get the certificate, your certification number, and those 3 keywords, and I will send you your CEU. Please note that you need to send the keywords straight after the session. If I receive keywords tomorrow or later, I will not be able to give you a CEU certificate. I will pop my email in the chat, but you should have also had my email when you signed up. We've added my email there for you guys, so you should have it there as well. All right. Enough with me talking about the logistics and Tizard. We welcome Dr. Paul Gavoni today to our journal club. He is very passionate about his work. He's prolific. He's written books. He does podcasts. I don't think he sleeps. I'm kind of sure he doesn't sleep. But he's also a very kind person. He's a martial artist. He's quite intimidating. I've seen him in person when I was getting trained in the US, and I could see that that guy has sparred in his life. But actually, he's very sweet and very good at communicating our science. So you guys are in for a treat. Paulie, thank you ever so much again for joining us today. If you would like to start by just telling us what you've been working on recently, because I know you're a busy bee, and then take it away, and I will just be here supporting with the chat and delivering the keywords. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Thanks for inviting me, man. That was a really kind introduction, man. I'm flattered. Yeah, well, right now I'm actually working on very excited about this, working with my colleague Anika Costa and Matt Sikoria of the Behavior Observations podcast. We're putting together something called the Behavioral Toolbox. And it's really for school consultants or anybody that's supporting behavior in schools. And, it's my passion is education and bringing organizational behavior management to education. They really need it. There was actually a good article I was reading. I just stumbled across it. It was about how school, educational leaders really need OBM to make a difference. So to me, it really holds the key to improving education, at least here in the U.S. And I can't think that it wouldn't hurt, or it would help education everywhere. I mean, it's the science of human behavior. So I'm just kind of curious. Who do we have? What countries are in the house today? Can you guys type that in the chat for me? Can they type, Danos? Yeah, I'd love to see who's in here.
Yes, they should be able to.
Oh, here we go. I got some good friends in the UK. Actually, one of my fighters just outside of London, if anybody's familiar with, watches as a UFC fan, one of my favorite people in the world, just the humblest, nicest guy, which is, a lot of people don't understand. A lot of fighters are really nice people. They don't have to be tough guys or anything. But Brad One Punch Pickett. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him, but just a sweetheart of a guy. And it's brought me over to London a couple times, and I just had a blast. I love it over there. Oh, we got Florida, Italy, great. I've been to Rome. We got to fight the first mixed martial arts event in Roman history. Which is pretty cool. And I've been able to really use the practical application of the science of human behavior, ABA, to make a difference in MMA and boxing, which has, been pretty fun. I love using it. What I really love is helping people. I look at it as a science of helping. It's very misunderstood outside of our field. And I think that, it's because our field has not done a good job of disseminating, because we've been a bunch of scientists, And, scientists that are really good at research, and we need researchers because they inform the rest of us on what to do. But we also need to think about the other side of the spectrum. That is, how do we make this science palatable for people so it can help everybody every day, and especially help them to help themselves and help other people. And that's what really made me want to write this book with my co-author, Brett Donovi, The 5 Scientific Laws of Life and Leadership, was just bringing the practical application of the science of human behavior to people so they can think about how they can use it to make a positive difference in their life and the lives of others. So that's what I really want to talk to you about. And I kind of, it's really just, I think about it as 100 years of the science boiled down to these, what we call 5 laws, and just, basic, behavioral technology. But I think it'll make sense to you guys. And I'm going to focus on leadership today. But really it can be used, for not only, leading an organization, and but it can be used for leading your life as well. And I'll explain that shortly. So just a little bit about me. I mean, you guys can look on my LinkedIn, and I actually hope you do connect with me on LinkedIn at the top here. I've been around, I've done a couple things. I've made a ton of mistakes. But the beautiful thing about the science of human behavior is that it doesn't give you the answers, right? But it gives you a way to find the answers. Like I'm not confident in myself a lot, but I am confident in the science. I do know that with the scientific lens on, that I'm able to better assess, problem solve, make decision, and take effective action that's going to produce the desired impact. And that's what I want to do. And I want to help other people do that as well. Because, at the root of, for me, I really, really, truly do love helping people to help themselves just across environment, across context. I really see this as the science of helping people. And, I've had this kind of weird experience. Oh, by the way, that was one of the kids that I was working with. He was actually, you can't see him there, but he's crying. He's actually competing in a martial arts tournament, and he's not getting hit in the head. It's all like body work. I don't want to see kids get hit in the head. I don't think it's a good idea, even though I come from a combat sport background. But was able to, really use the science to help him develop his skills, and help support the transference of those skills out into the natural environment. I think about skills as like almost like birthing a baby. It's not the same thing, so don't get me wrong there, clearly. But we have to build the skill. We have to, determine an outcome that we want to produce, and we have to build the skill. And we have to get to grow up and go out into the real world. And the real world in the fight game, or in martial arts or combat sports, is being able to perform effectively. And in the professional world, that is, if it's a cage and there's millions of people fighting, the science can really help people to do that. And that's just one application. If you love crochet and you want to help the crochet industry, you can do it with the science. It doesn't matter. We can use the science to do everything. And we kind of forget that. We get this thing that I call behavioral myopia, and it really seems to happen when we're working with other people who are not our client or our learners, right? It seems to happen when when we would really start working with other adults. And that is, if you've ever found yourself blaming others, if you've ever found yourself, saying, they just need to do their job, or, it's not my job, or, whatever it might be, what that means in that moment is that you've taken off your behavioral lens. And don't feel bad, because I did it all the time. I still do it. I still catch myself doing it. But we know that, and all those of us who understand the science understand that if that person is not performing to a standard, it means that we need to modify the environment, right? We need to help bring out the best in people by manipulating the environment to get better performance from them. And there's a reason they're not performing, and it usually boils down to it's a can't do or it's a won't do, and both require a very specific set of interventions. Does that make sense to everybody so far? And darn it, I can't see where you guys are typing. If you are, Thanos, can you report out to me? Can you guys type in yes if that makes sense so far, and about the behavioral myopia?
Yeah, we've got people saying, yep.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Awesome. Awesome. Right. So, now I want to advise that anybody who is a behavior analyst trained in the science of human behavior, always keep on their behavior lens. There's really not a need to take it off. There's just not. If anything that you're doing to work with people, keep it on, because that's what's going to help you bring out the best in them. But it means that you got to bring out the best in yourself, right? It means that you have to change your habits. Because we've all, whenever we went into the science, started learning about it, we still have our own history that's been conditioned into us. But also within our educational programs, we're getting conditioned to, again, see it as using the science to work with persons with disabilities. And thank goodness that is there for them to help them, because it's had great success in making a positive difference. And I know that in some cases, and the science is misunderstood, again, because we have not done a good job disseminating, and there's been people who are angry at the field, and they will protest it, and saying that it's harming people. And for them and their experience, maybe that is what happened for them. But it's not the science. It would have been somebody not using the science as it was intended, not considering social validity and doing things to people and not with them. And probably well-intended people wanting to make a positive difference. But as in my first slide, it's not about intent, it's about impact. And so that's where we're at. And we really got to listen to these folks and think about how we can do a better job involving people in the interventions that we're doing and in supporting them. Again, we don't want to do things to people. We want to do them with them, and we want to make sure that we're keeping on our behavior lens. And the science isn't a 3-term contingency, it's a 4-term contingency. And part of that is then creating a want for people and understanding how to do that. And there's different approaches out there now for doing that. If you've never heard of, for example, motivational interviewing, that's an approach right now that is being supported by the by the behavior analytic community. So I've been diving in that myself. I want to get better at it, because I used to go into a lot of places and say, hey, I'm here to help, and the science is the best thing in the world, and it would turn people off. Even though I was super well intended, it would turn them off. We have to create a want. There's actually some of the best sales techniques. If you've ever heard of a book called Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, what they do is they suggest asking a series of questions. And if I frame it behaviorally, finding out what people's reinforcers are, finding out what's blocking their access to the reinforcers are, uncovering some, other issues that might be there so they can understand the scope of the issue. I would say that's like a motivating operation. And then engaging them in change talk, right? Hey, if I was able to do this, would you be willing to do A, B, and C? And so it's powerful stuff. So we have to think about these tools. We want to engage people in the change, and that's always been a thing, right? Social validity. We want to make sure that we're involving people and it's having the desired impact. So, as I mentioned, that this is going to be it's about leadership. I'm actually going to filter it down to coaching, but I want to define this stuff. The book is called The Five Scientific Laws of Life and Leadership. Any of these things, leaders, managers, trainers, coaches, we all, if we were to apply this to ourselves, we are all maybe, trying to lead a life. We all have to manage our own behavior. We all have to acquire skills and knowledge. And we all have to support the transference of those skills into a natural environment. And that's what this stuff is. That what you have right here are nouns. Leaders, managers, trainers, and coaches are nouns, which means somebody could be a leader, but they're not necessarily leading, or a manager, but they're not necessarily managing, a trainer, but they're not training, and a coach, but they're not coaching, because we have to look at these things functionally, right? What is the purpose of these? And I would argue that leading is about, it's like the EO in the sky, right? It's about having a vision and creating a want to move towards that vision, and giving people something to focus on and move towards that direction. Managing is about keeping people accountable and having them, keeping them in the bounds and moving towards that vision that's been established. Training is about skill acquisition, right? Got to give people the knowledge and skills to do what they need to do. And coaching, and this is where the rubber meets the road. So I'm going to frame this talk actually from coaching, because remember, it doesn't matter what title you have in your job. You can lead from anywhere. You can manage from anywhere. You could train from anywhere. You could coach from anywhere. And I would argue that if you're a behavior analyst, you have to wear these hats multiple times. So coaching functionally is about supporting the transference of skills learned into the natural environment. So I can train my fighters how to fight outside of the cage in the ring. But just because they can do it outside, they know how to do it, what to do it, even they know the why to do it and they want to do it, they still have to discriminate the when of doing it. And I still have to get them in touch with positive reinforcement. So they're going to do it even when I'm not looking. Does that make sense to everybody so far? Type a yes in there if you guys are with me for this, that I want you to think about these things functionally.
Yeah,
Great.
getting a lot of yeses.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And I can see the yeses now. Yep, good. I figured out the little icon at the bottom. So as I mentioned, that's why I'm going to frame this in coaching terms, because it's not, in the end, it doesn't matter about title, right? Everybody in an organization is responsible for this. And that's what I love about the science, is that it's parsimonious. We keep things simple, right? We have a result that we want to produce, and we need to figure out what people need to do more or less or differently, i.e. behave, in order to produce those results. And that's what's so great about the science, is just keeping it simple. Scientists, right? KISS. I don't like to say stupid, although it's fun sometimes. If I got a friend, I'll call him stupid, but just keep it simple. Scientists. That's the best way to think about things. We always want to bring it back to what the simplest solution is and the simplest explanation for things are. And so one of the things that we have to remember is that when we're talking about behavior change, what we're really most of the time talking about are creating habits, either developing new habits or changing old habits to new habits, right? And when we think about habits, what it seems like it suggests to me, at least, is that there's a process and there's a timeline, right? I can't just change behavior once, twice. A lot of times I have to support this habit development, and that takes time. And so before we get into these 5 laws, we have to remember that at the root of our field, and what I would argue people wouldn't be complaining and wouldn't feel a way about the science if we remember that our goal is to get people in touch with positive reinforcement, right? Something that's added as a result of their behavior, and something that is indeed a positive reinforcer. We don't want to use coercion to drive behavior. When we use coercion, we're getting paired with something aversive, and people aren't going to like us. It doesn't matter what our title is. And if we're paired with the science, they're not going to like the science, right? So we have to remember this, that if we are using negative reinforcement to drive behavior, we are going to get people doing just enough to get by, and only when you're looking. Now, I don't know what it's like in other countries, although I've driven a couple of other countries. I know there's some folks from Italy in here, and man, that scared the crap out of me driving over there. In fact, I didn't want to drive. I let somebody else drive, and I was still afraid. I don't know how the people did it on the mopeds, man. I thought they were going to get run over. At any rate, over here in the U.S., and I'm assuming it's the same elsewhere, typically the only time we're doing the speed limit is in the presence of the punisher, in this case, law enforcement, right? And that's when we're maybe going a little bit above and beyond. But when you're leading an organization, leading in a household, wherever you might be leading, you don't want to be looking at somebody all the time. You don't have time to do that. You want them to engage in behavior that's producing meaningful results, and that's also adding value to the organization. We call that engagement, value added behavior that's reinforced, right? And we really want that reinforcement to be positive in nature, so they're going to keep doing it. So remember that antecedents are things that get behavior going. They tell behavior what to do, right? This is goal setting, coming up with plans, giving people instruction, all of these things that come before a behavior, making a great speech. And they are very important, right? They're the peanut butter and the jelly, right? We need it to make the sandwich typically. But what's most important is that when that behavior gets going, that it needs to get in touch with some sort of reinforcement. And we really want a couple of critical behaviors to get in touch with positive reinforcement, because if everything's important, nothing's important. So, when we work with a learner or a client in a school or a facility, we typically focus on 1, 2, or 3 behaviors. And it's the same thing when we're thinking about performance, right? We can only focus on a couple behaviors at a time, but we want to look at pivotal behaviors, critical behaviors that are going to have the biggest bang for the buck. And so once we get behavior going with these antecedents, we want to positively reinforce. Now, this yellow one here might be us getting them in touch with positive reinforcement. Hopefully we've established ourselves as a positive reinforcement and we're giving them feedback, and we might be doing things that are contrived just to keep their behavior going right, to help improve their performance. Then all of a sudden, oh, look, we help them see that by engaging in these certain behaviors, that it's producing some sort of valued outcome for themselves, right? We're highlighting this stuff. This is where we can literally point out the impact, or we use data, but either way, we need to help people discriminate. And this is where sometimes it's hard to see if you're working in a class, that student that was telling everybody to F off 20 times an hour has dropped down to 15 times an hour, right? Because you're only seeing that bad behavior. But when you can show that in a graph, that like, look, because you engage in these couple of behaviors, you use more opportunities to respond, you use more behavior specific praise, you gave some non-contingent attention, that behavior is starting to go down. And if that is reinforcing to the adult, well, then they're going to keep moving in the right direction, because maybe they value a environment that is more learning ready, and students sitting in their chair learning more and asking questions and engaging in pro-social behavior. All these things they see more students engage, right? That's valuable to them. And so we keep trying to, fill in the gap here and again, help them get in touch with some sort of naturally occurring positive reinforcement. And what we call this, and Aubrey calls this, and I was very fortunate to get to spend like a week at Aubrey Daniels International. I got a scholarship maybe 10 years ago. And what it really taught me was that this is just ABA. It validated, it confirmed like, oh, well, this is just ABA. It's just ABA as applied to organizations when we start talking about organizational behavior management. And so, as I mentioned,
okay.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, just to say that our keyword, the first keyword is habits. The first keyword is habits. Thank you.
That's a good keyword too. I like that, man. That's very important of what we're doing. So this is just a good reminder that if we want people to go above and beyond, and even when we're not looking, our goal is to get them in touch with positive reinforcement. When I say them, I mean a couple of critical behaviors, right? A couple of key behaviors. And we want to shape these habits over time. And if we do, and we do it in the right way using positive reinforcement, people are going to keep doing what we've asked them to do and what we supported them doing and what they find that is valuable. We're going to talk about how to do that through what we call the 5 laws. And these are just like some immutable truth. These are like things that you need to do to make a difference. And so we'll cover pinpointing, goal setting, self-monitoring, report out, reciprocal feedback, and pay for performance. In this case, the pay for performance as we write it in the book, again, because it was for the purpose of disseminating, what we're really talking about here is positive reinforcement. In education, I didn't have money to help turn around schools. There's no money to give educators more for if their performance has improved, if they're meeting goals. I wish we had that. So we had to find some other types of positive reinforcement or just reinforcement in general. So we had to make a difference here with that. So I'm going to cover that. So we're going to start first with pinpointing. And pinpointing, 2 types of pinpointings I'm going to talk about, and that is one, if we're going to engage in some sort of change somewhere, and whether it be, again, leading, managing, training, coaching, anything, and people aren't performing to a standard, we really need to get to the root cause of that standard. It's very important to do that before we intervene. It doesn't have to be that difficult, but we need to understand this stuff. And we also need to understand that if we are going to achieve a result, a pinpoint result, what behaviors do we need people to engage in? Again, do something more or less or differently. And so in the book, and actually most of my books, I include some the PDC, the Performance Diagnostic Checklist, because it's so simple, it's so awesome. It's just a 2-pager, and it's so critical for making a difference. You have to understand why people aren't engaging in certain behaviors. And there's 2 general reasons. You guys want to try typing in the chat box what those 2 general reasons are when somebody's not performing to a standard? Just one of them. You don't have to give both those. Just one reason why somebody might not be performing to a standard. Yeah, can't do. Good, Janine. Hello, Janine, by the way. And isn't okay, too difficult, right? So I'm going to pair that with a won't do or don't do, right? So what we're talking about is a skill versus will, right? Skill versus will, and they are both drastically different interventions, right? If they can't do it, then there needs to be we need to train them. If they don't do it, then we need to take a look at that. And some people said it's unclear. Yes, that could be. It could be unclear, right? Still falls into, is it a skill or a will deficit? They're not, they're not clear about something. It's going to be a specific intervention, like simply setting expectations, right? Helping people understand specifically what they need to do to engage in that behavior. If somebody was just simply unclear, but they had the skill set, it would be a huge waste of resources to go train people in something they already know how to do. So we need to assess this. So it's broken down into 4 sections. There's antecedent training, like, for example, are there clear goals and expectations for the performer? Can they actually explain what they're supposed to be doing? That's a simple way to assess. Can you tell me what you're supposed to be doing? Can you demonstrate what you're supposed to be doing in terms of like knowledge and skills? Do you understand the why behind it, right? That's the establishing operation there, right? Did they know, because the PDC is just really the 4-term contingency. Do they have equipment and processes? Do they have the materials in place? And are there things that might be preventing them from doing it? But here's the most important thing that we need to understand about this. And we need to, when my fighters lose, I don't look to blame them. I think about, man, what can I do more or less or differently to be better for them? In schools, when I was trying to turn them around, if the people weren't performing to their level, I wasn't like, they're not doing their job. I never did that. Well, I shouldn't say I never did that. Yes, I did before, when I realized I didn't have on my behavioral lens, right? When I was suffering from behavioral myopia. But I looked at their performance as a reflection of what I was doing. So what do I need to do as a leader and a manager and a trainer and a coach, more or less or differently, to help bring out the best in them? And that's why the 4th and last piece of the PDC has to do with motivation and consequences, right? So how often is the performer being observed? Are they able to observe the impact of their performance, right? Remember I said we're trying to help them get in touch with that. Is that impact meaningful to them, right? Is that being paired somehow with some sort of reinforcement? How often and what kind of feedback are we giving? Maybe you're observing them, but you've paired yourself with something aversive because you're giving feedback that is about correcting their performance as well, which is a big mistake when you set goals that are too large, right? Remember, we want to shape behavior. We want to pair ourselves as much as possible with positive reinforcement. Does that make sense, everybody? Can you see the power of the PDC? Hey, and if you don't want to buy the books, and just please know, like, I make like literally like a dime when books sell. I don't care about selling books, and that is the truth. On my LinkedIn page, I have a couple of articles that are linked to the PDC. You can just pull that, and I think the human service and that was for education, the ones that are on there. I think there's a free version of the human services one that you can just Google and find. But I'd really recommend you get that, because when you understand why somebody's not performing, then you can provide a precise intervention as opposed to doing guesswork. And that's what we do, right? We want to make sure that we're engaging in behaviors that are precise, systematic and purposeful, what I would call deliberate coaching. That's why Nick and I wrote the book, Deliberate Coaching. Okay, so that was pinpointing performance issues. But we also need to pinpoint results and behavior. Now, pinpointing isn't a scientific term, but what it suggests is precision. So if you guys were going to fly over here, let's say you didn't live in the country, you're going to fly over and see me, and I would love to see you. You're not going to, and I'm in Florida, by the way, you're not going to put in your GPS or on your map that you're just going to Florida. Florida's a big place. You'll never find me. You have to be precise about the result, right? Where you're going to get. And that's going to require a set of precise behaviors. Now, there's more than one way to get here, but you have to identify those behaviors and you have to engage in those so that you're moving in the right direction. And now in organizations, like in organizations that serve, say, children or learners with autism, there are some very common results and behaviors that are trying to be produced in terms of improving, living standards and quality of life for people. And there's certain behaviors that, say, RBTs or behavior analysts need to engage in. So you can have a master list of these things. For example, if it's a BCBA working with RBTs, good behaviors that they need to have, they need to be able to observe. They need to be able to give feedback. They need to be able to share data. These are all pivotal behaviors, the same way like the RBT needs to be able to collect data. So all these things can have this master list of common pinpoints that could be in there. And whenever possible, like for example, feedback is a pivotal behavior. You want to have those type of behaviors identified because that's going to allow people to get in touch with more reinforcement and help them to learn more. So that was the first law, pinpointing, right? We need to understand if there's a problem and why it's occurring, and we need to have a result and figure out what behaviors that we need to move towards. Now we want to quantify this stuff, right? And that is through setting goals and identifying some metrics. I look at the result. You can think about that as an end goal. We really want to break those down, but goals are very important. They're covered in the scientific literature. I'm not going to read this to you. You can see this. It is supported by the behavior analytic literature, but they're very important for moving people in the right direction. And so I have a couple simple hacks for setting SMART goals. And outside of the field, and in most places, SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and I forget what the T was. Anyways, the T stood for something. My SMART, the SMART that I got from Scott Geller, is specific but motivational, right? In other words, in the T stands for trackable, so there's still a metric in there. If you're setting goals for people and they're not motivated to achieve the goals, I don't really think it's a SMART goal. So there's certain simple ways to help them be motivated. One of the ones here is involving them. We never want to do things to people. We want to, do things with them. And that could be through the good questions and leading them, even though you might know that they need to achieve this. Forcing goals on them is not a way to get them to achieve them or to want to engage in behavior. The first thing is asking questions, and then you're looking for things like change talk. In other words, they're even talking about making a change. And then that could be where, all right, you set goals and determine an action plan. Making sure goals are small. That doesn't mean they should be challenging. Actually, more challenging goals increase motivation. I think there was some research that said that people are I think it was, don't quote me on this, I think 37% more likely to achieve goals when they were reasonably challenging. In other words, if something's easy, it doesn't feel like worth accomplishing. But if it's just beyond our reach and we have to stretch a little bit, and they're smaller goals, but it's still a stretch, people are more likely to engage in the behaviors required to achieve them. Finding quick wins. Think about this as like organizational or group behavioral momentum. Finding something as easy to do or relatively low response effort that produces a visible and valued outcome for people. I had to do in the schools that I worked in. When I was going to turn around these failing schools that nobody could turn around, but I and my team had a OBM equipped with a toolbox of OBM. I had to find something simple, and the schools were a mess. The cops were coming out all the time because there were so many fights going on, and retention was an issue. Teachers were quitting all the place. So I would start with like a hallway, and I wouldn't force it on people. I would say, let's get, I'd involve them and say, what can we do here to make this change? And we would pick something small, and we'd shape that hallway up. When people saw that hallway is shaped up, like, oh, well, man, I guess this stuff kind of works. And I guess this guy is not, he looks like a moron, but he's not such a moron. And people are more willing to engage in behavior that requires a little bit more response effort along the way. Identifying accomplishments. Listen, this is one of the most important things that you can have when you're trying to make change. One of the problems with leading, if you only look at results, is sometimes those results take time to achieve. If you have not figured out some metrics that serve as leading indicators along the way, it can feel like you guys aren't doing your job, right? And it also can make the leaders and managers feel like you're not doing your job. So when you drive somewhere, right? Well, by the way, accomplishments are like countable nouns. And I'll explain. When you're driving somewhere, if the result was getting to your destination, there are all sorts of indicators that let you know you're heading that direction. Maybe if you're going in the long direction, like if it's in the US, it might be crossing a state line. That feels like an accomplishment. Or getting, through 300 miles. That feels like an accomplishment. But it lets you know you're moving in the right direction. It also lets leadership and management know that things are happening. Because if not, and you're just looking at that result, if it was driving, like, you're not there yet, you're not there yet, you're not there yet. If it's a school and school's trying to reduce suspensions, which is a big issue over here in the US, right? Kids being sent home for misbehavior. If you're only looking at the result, that result might not move for a while. Why? Because there might be a whole bunch of things that need to happen. If the root cause of it was teachers not trained in behavior management, they don't have classroom management plans, they haven't taught a classroom management plan, each one of those things can serve as accomplishment. The number of teachers who've been identified that need training, 1 accomplishment. The number of trainings that who have now been trained, 2 accomplishments. The number of teachers who have created classroom management, 3 accomplishments. The number of teachers who are now standing in the hallway greeting kids, 4 accomplishments. All these things lead up in this bank that eventually should begin to hit that result, right? And as a performer, it feels good to know you've accomplished these things. As a leader, it lets you know that people are engaging in the right work, right? If you've identified the right accomplishments, and now you can positively reinforce it. So this is really important work done by Thomas Gilbert and in his work on human competence. And I can't tell you enough that, again, results, behavior, accomplishments. Figure out those accomplishments that people on a daily basis need to produce, on a weekly basis, because remember, it's not about time worked, right? It's about what's occurring within that time. In fact, in this world now, this 9-to-5 stuff a lot of times isn't working for a lot of people. People are going to work. In fact, there was a study in the UK, and I forget what industry it was, and it was a survey study, so I don't know how valid it was, but what they found with this particular study was, and I have this in the book, was workers were reporting that they were working for about 3.75 hours a day, not even half a day. So you think about all the wasted effort. Now, what would happen if the accomplishments were identified to them and they produced those accomplishments and they went home early? Let them go home early. Let people live a great life. As long as they're producing the quality work, it's not about what happens between those hours. It's about the accomplishments that they're producing that lead to valued business results, right? Does that make sense, everybody? I wish people could understand this so much because people are fixated on the clock. There's a lot of stuff that's not going on the clock. Engage people. They want to have autonomy. They want to have choice. That's a big reinforcer, and you'll get more out of them by doing that. Writing goals down, 33% more likely to achieve goals when they are written down. That's a simple behavior hack. Get people to write them down. And Premack principle, just getting people to, this is grandma's law, eat your vegetables first before you have a dessert. Help people identify, the things that might be a little bit, more challenging, and put the reinforcement behind it, right? Have them work to gain those things. So those are just like these little simple behavior hacks here that should help you along the way.
Can I just give our second keyword? It's accomplishments. Our second keyword is accomplishments.
That's another good one, brother. I hope you guys walk away with those habits and accomplishments. Very important. So this is this hack here, this part of the package is, this makes such a difference. This self-monitoring report out, and there's good research in our field that supports self-monitoring and the report out. This produces a contingency. Now, if I'm working in a business, it's very hard for me to go look at 10 performers, 15 performers, even 5 performers. I can't see what they're doing all the time, but I can certainly get those 10 performers to look at their own performance. And remember, performance, by the way, performance is a package. It's a result you're trying to produce and the behaviors required to achieve that, right? Your goal and your behavior together. It's a package. So they can report this stuff out to you. So it's 10 people looking at their own behavior, reporting out to you, and then you going around and maybe sampling their work, right? And engaging in a reserve agreement. Here's what they said they did, and they're producing, and you're seeing it, and it puts you in a position to reinforce. It's so simple, but so powerful. When I worked with some of my coachees, I would have them do something simple like shoot me a text. If I would choose one of the critical behaviors that we need to, and I'm going to cover this in just a second, in coaching that you want to have people engage in is question asking. And so if I teach my coachee how to ask questions, well, I need to help him get into, or her get into the habit of doing it. And so I would have him self-monitor. I'm thinking about a very specific person I was coaching, self-monitor and report out. And so we would have to determine, like, who's he reporting out to? He's reporting out to me. What's he reporting out? In this case, he was reporting out on question asking. When? Well, to start with, because it was a new behavior, we agreed that he would do it every day. And it was a goal of his to do it every day because he recognized when you start asking questions, his job was going to get much easier. The people he worked with were going to start performing better. He was going to help them to be able to better assess, problem solve, make decisions, and take action because they were prompt dependent on him. And this is why we wanted him to switch to question asking. Where this was going to happen, it was happening again through actually where it was going to happen was during the work hours and through text in this setting because it was virtual. And also we would meet virtually to recap everything and how text in this virtual outcome, right? This virtual modality. And as I mentioned, we want to keep this kind of thing as simple as possible because complexity is the enemy of scalability. If you put any sort of performance management system in place in your organization or in a classroom, in a group, if it's sophisticated, it's not going to be scalable. You might get it going in your spot, right? In the small spot, but the harder it is, the more difficult it becomes to maintain. And it's also very difficult for people to adapt it. So now let's take a look at reciprocal feedback. You've established a way for people to self-monitor and report out, right? You've figure out some pinpoints, set some goals, and now they're looking at their own performance and they're reporting out on some sort of schedule. It's thicker at the beginning, and then you want to fade this out. Now we got to consider feedback. All learning requires feedback. Now we have to remember that feedback is bidirectional. It's not, and it shouldn't be just one way. That's the worst kind of feedback, right? I am giving feedback to somebody that I might help them perform better, but I'm also using their responses to me to determine what I might need to do more or less or differently. If you're supervising people and people aren't performing well, the same way I mentioned with coaching, I don't think about what they need to do more or less or differently. I think about what do I need to do as a leader, a coach, a trainer, a manager to help them do something more or less or differently. Again, because if I'm going to bring out the best in my people that I'm working with, I need to get the best out of myself, and I need feedback from them. I can get feedback through observing their responses to me, but I can also directly solicit their feedback so I can evaluate how I'm doing. And I do that as a professor. I check in midway to say, hey guys, how is the course going for you? How do you feel about it? Is there anything that you like that I'm doing? Is there something I can do more or less or differently to make the experience better? And sometimes, like in organizations, when you're checking in and you're doing it regularly, you'll find that there could be miscommunication, mismessaging, and it's good to have that stuff early on so you can adjust it, what you're doing. And other times you find that systematically that, there are things that they have a good point and you can make some changes. And then still other times there's like, hey, they're not happy about something, but at least you can explain why it is the way it is. And when people understand why, they can be very reasonable. And this is why having a system of reciprocal feedback, we need feedback loops. Some feedback loops need to be quicker than others. When it comes to looking at your own coaching, I would have those in repetition. They're happening more frequently. If you're evaluating like your organization, like the climate of your organization, I'd look at that as shared perception. These evaluations that are at the end of the year, they're akin to an autopsy. This is happening in a lot of schools that I was supporting, right? What are you going to do with data at the end of the year? It's too late. There's nothing you can do. We need data that's coming more frequently. So as a leader, we can make adjustments to our behaviors, to our systems, to what we're doing. So it becomes an intervention. And so in organizations that are struggling, I would recommend like this coming out weekly. It could be a brief Google survey, just checking in with your people, right? Remember, we want to make this stuff socially valid. How are you feeling about the way things are going? How are you feeling about leadership? Yada, 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 all these pieces, 3 or 4 or 5 questions just to check in with them. At a minimum, I would have something, personally, I like to have something monthly. If you're doing something quarterly, you're probably ahead of the game compared to most people. But we need to understand that feedback should be bidirectional. We do not want unidirectional feedback. We're giving feedback, but we're also responding to feedback. That's a great way to reinforce people, to give them buy-in, because when you respond to their feedback and you make changes based on what they tell you, they're much more likely to engage in behavior change. Much, much, much more likely. So I mentioned this earlier. Performance feedback is about behaviors and results, right? These tasks are made up of behaviors, and we're trying to get a specific outcome. So when we give feedback, we don't want to just talk about one thing. We want to align what people are doing with the outcomes, right? And we want to shift our feedback approaches at the beginning when people don't know what to do. We want to shift from telling to asking. I would snapshot the screen. This is another one of those very important things, to make sure you engage in question asking. I can't tell you what a huge difference it will make for you as a leader when you stop telling and you start asking. For years, and I still do this, I tell the story. I actually write about it in one of my books and one of my articles as well. I still to this day have to listen to the GPS tell me where to go to the same place I've been 100 times. Over and over and over again, I go to that same place. Why? Because I am prompt dependent, because I haven't had to think for myself. In other words, identify, discriminate the different things in the environment that tell me where to go, to turn here, to go this way. I just listen to that GPS. Go straight, turn right. And so if you're in a leadership position, a manager position, coaching position, and people are always having to rely on you because you're telling them what to do, you are making your job very difficult, and you're also not fostering independence in them. Again, we want to make sure we can help people better assess, problem solve, make decisions, and take action independent of you, right? We want to grow more leaders around us as much as possible. Does that make sense, everybody? Who in here has been in the habit of, when I say habit, if you are seen as an expert, people come to you a lot, and they come to you a lot because you have the solutions, right? And so you tell them what to do, but it's a trap that we get caught up in, and it can really become, it can drain you. It can make it so you don't have balance of life. Ask questions, but you have to ask questions when you know people have the toolbox. So it's like these questions become general prompts, and these questions have to do with, very simply, results, right? And behavior. What's different as a result of you doing this? What did you do? What did you see? What did the person say? Et cetera, et cetera. But the other piece of this is that we can't see everybody doing things all the time. But when you engage in question asking, and you ask for precision of responses, then it allows you to at least assess what they're doing, So tell me, I know you were working in the classroom the other day. So, who'd you go work with? Why'd you choose to work with that person? What goal were you working on? Why did you choose that goal? Tell me what you did, and you want precise responses. Why do you think you want precise responses from these people? What would be a benefit to you as a coach, a leader, a manager, for getting people to respond with very descriptive responses? Why could that be helpful to you and to them? Go ahead and type in the chat for me. Yes, yep. Self-reflection, clarity, getting them to problem solve, Nadia. Yes. All these, yes, identifying areas that require skill building because you're constantly able to assess. They're going to learn to self-manage. Absolutely. It provides you with opportunities to provide positive reinforcement, right? All these pieces become very, very important. Yes, it fosters independence. You will, if you're telling a lot right now, when you shift the questioning, I hope you reflect back and say, you were glad you attended this session today, because I'm telling you, this is like life-changing but you have to get yourself in the habit of asking questions. You have to shape your own behavior. So you're gonna have to ask yourself, what am I gonna do to prompt myself, right? If I've done a good enough job establishing operation, there's a want for you, and you're like, I want to have a goal of asking more questions. What are going to be your accomplishments every day that you're going to engage in, right? You're going to try to ask, somebody a couple questions a day. Who can you report out to that's going to hold you accountable, that can give you feedback on the type of questions that you're doing? What change are you looking to see as a result of question asking, right? That you might see people start, those little aha moments come up, You can see people start to better assess and problem solve and take action. So you're looking for these indicators that are reinforcers to you, because that's what's going to keep your habit going in the right direction, right? So, whatever you do, I used to put sticky notes all over my computer. I literally had these type of questions everywhere because I wanted to change from telling to asking people, because I really knew this was something I needed to do. I was in a bad habit. I mentioned earlier that when we're all done, we need to evaluate ourselves, right? We might be well-intended, but in the end, here's what matters. Did people change behavior, right? Again, whether it's coaching, leadership, training, put the noun in it. It doesn't matter. Whatever, when you're trying to get behavior change, it doesn't matter what your title is. This is the deal here. Did it change results? Are people satisfied with what you got going on? Did we follow the process? If we didn't follow the process, maybe it's like something else happened. Maybe we need to change up the process, right? And so in the end, the big pieces of everything is that we need to remember that it's really about consequences of behavior, right? And we know, what kind of consequences are going to keep your behavior going, what kind of consequences are going to keep other people's behavior going. Going back to one of those earlier slides, we got to get people in touch with positive reinforcement. And so we need to know what's positively reinforcing to them. And this is why engaging them in goal setting, observing them, asking them good questions through good interviewing techniques that are open-ended questions, and you're using affirmations, and you're doing good reflections, and you're summarizing what they said, and you're involving people in the process, and you're using those goal-setting hacks that I mentioned earlier, and you've identified these accomplishments and found quick wins. All these increase the likelihood that people are going to engage in behavior and move towards goals. But coming back around in the end, right, it still comes back to results. Right? Results and behavior, and what results are most important? Well, these are where we need to ask people. We got to figure out where you're going to get the most bang for your buck in the organization. And it's got to be important to the organization, but important to the person. If I'm going in to work with a teacher and I know that they need to make this, produce this result, but they're not buying into that yet, well, the result that's most important at that moment is what's important to that performer. Because if I try to force them to do something, and if I haven't established myself as a reinforcer, I'm going to be shot in the water. I need to engage them in behavior that's going to help them produce positive reinforcement. So I'm paired with that. And then we will tackle those other things in the future, and hopefully the near future. So, here are some things to consider, right? So how do you know you're actually using the right consequences, right? Positive reinforcement gives you this kind of talk. Can help, choose me, let me try, all these kind of cool things, Negative reinforcement gets this kind of behavior, and it gets a culture of, people who really just don't want to be here and they don't want to be involved in things. So, I'm not saying that everybody is always going to be on the left side here, but you can use as a metric, how many people are engaging these kind of behaviors. Because we have to think about the measure of a leader, a manager, a trainer, and a coach is in the behavior of the people that we are trying to support. In the end, that's what we have to remember. So here's on my list of references. I did send Thanos a PDF, and I'm wondering, do I have any questions? Now, I know it can be uncomfortable to share questions in a big format with a lot of people looking. If you have questions and you don't feel comfortable putting here, shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn. I'm pretty responsive on social media. Follow me on Instagram at Dr. Pauly Gloves, or Facebook at Pauly Gloves. And I'm pretty responsive to questions. Thanos, I'm very thankful that you came in and that you reach out to me and have me come in to give a chat. And I hope you walk away with, there was something that I said that was a little bit of, how did I do for you guys today? Was it okay? You guys want to type in the chat for me?
I'm pretty sure people enjoyed it. I definitely did, and I should be the one thanking you, Pauly, for joining us today. Guys, if you've got questions, and feel free to type them in the chat. Pauly is monitoring the chat, and we can always read them out for everyone.
Thank you, guys.
But you can see the positive feedback.
Yeah. That's my big reinforcers there. I'd have felt so bad walking away, think I didn't do something good. I really like to help and get people to reframe. By the way, here's something I didn't pitch at the beginning. I don't know if you guys know that we have our own day, World Behavior Analysis Day. I sit on the board of it. So I encourage you guys, we have a YouTube channel, World Behavior Analysis Day. Please subscribe to it. There are a number of videos on there that we break down behavior analysis in like layman terms so we can share it with people. We want to disseminate the science across the world so people understand it more, so they embrace it more, so they can better help themselves and help other people with the practical application of it. So please, it's called World Behavior Analysis Day, and it's on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. And we also have a website. It's called behavioranalysisday.com. Thank you, guys.
Could you pop that in the chat, Paul?
Yeah. World.
So that people can visit your website. I'm pretty sure they can easily find the YouTube.
Yeah, if they go to the YouTube, if you go to the YouTube, the description of it is in the link. So subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure you hit the bell so you can be notified. And then there's the website is actually in descriptions of some of the videos. Thank you, Barney. Last keyword they're looking for, Thanos.
Yes, I am aware. I'm just looking for any. I'm checking if there are any questions for you. But we've got so many people thanking you that it's hard for me to discriminate. So I'm quickly reading. I will share the PowerPoint as always. Don't worry. Paul has been very kind. He's already emailed it to me. It's going to come along with your certificates. Okay, so then in that case, let's deliver the third keyword. The third keyword is outcomes. The third keyword is outcomes. So email me please at a.vostanis. Let me just pop it again in the chat. The three key. Oh, no. I misspelled my name. Give me a sec. How daft. All right, here's the correct one. a.vostanis@kent.ac.uk. So please email me the three keywords, your full name, your BCBA certification number. Please don't send me your account number. That's not useful. Your full name, your certification number, the three keywords, and I will email you the certificate within about a month. So don't worry if you don't get it straight away. The third keyword was outcomes. The third keyword was outcomes. Dr. Polygloves, thank you ever so much. It
Good
was
to see you,
great,
brother.
and hopefully we will have you again next year to talk about your work. You didn't say anything about your podcast. You've got a podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate the prompts. I have a new podcast called Crisis in Education. And so, if you work in education or you have your own children in education, you might want to tune into that. Recently, we actually interviewed Andrew Kita from Morningside Academy, who, they're world renowned for direct instruction and precision teaching. This is actually where I got to spend some time with Thanos. So check it out. We've got some good things. Also, this is a shameless plug. I'll say this one. I do work for the Professional Crisis Management Association, crisisintervention.com. We use real applied behavior analysis in our training, so people are built to fluency. We use real applied behavior analysis in actual crisis management procedures, and we have whole courses that focus on just prevention, right? Not even physical stuff. Whole courses that build fluency in what people can say and do. Every parent should be trained in. Every teacher, everybody should have these basic applications of the science of human behavior for developing relationships and gently correcting misbehavior in a way that is not coercive. So please check us out at crisisintervention.com.
Paul, we've got a question in. How frequently would you expect to observe/train in terms of hours? Often hours for teaching assistants to train them with one child is very low. Over here, I assume here in the UK, 3 hours every 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for the question, Rachel. I think that's a very important question. One, it would all depend on what that person's history was. I don't know what their knowledge and skills were. So if we're talking about developing skills or we're talking about coaching them. But it's going to be based on the performance of the learner. Now, over here, people are required to pass a 40-hour certification test to become RBT. And I'm like, that's crap. I'm going to tell you that just passing a test on a paper does not mean people are able to perform. My recommendation to organizations would be this, and it's going to cost money up front, but it's going to save money, and more importantly, it's going to help more learners on the backside. When people come in, we should do a competency assessment, right? And they should be paid based at that level, right? And we should have resources available for them, and we tier the pay based on them moving towards completing that competency, right? So now there's a reinforcement there that they're going to seek out the knowledge and skills because they're going to want to become competent so they can access that pay. In this way, they're going to be more likely, at least they have the knowledge and skills to do what they need to do. And then this is where the coaching comes in, and some of the pieces that I mentioned before. You can't see everybody do everything, but there can be things where you have regular self-monitoring report out. It could be with individuals, but also doing it in groups. And I love doing it in groups where people come and talk about what they've got going on. I like for people to share positive experiences, things that they've done well, right? So they become exemplars for other people instead of always coming in and sharing what's not working for them. Does that make sense? And was that helpful? Was that a helpful response, Rachel or Rochelle? I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
I think it made perfect sense.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Yep.
Cool. Okay, thank you, everyone. We will upload the recording soon on YouTube. And as I said, CEUs are going to be sent out within a month.